We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including all kinds of NHL trade rumors around the NHL. Today, we're looking at a variety of teams, including the Toronto Maple Leafs and LA Kings, maybe linked to at least one player on the Philadelphia Flyers. We'll talk about a couple of Flyers players that might be available. We'll see what happens with them. Plus, we have some updates on the Carolina Hurricanes and the St. Louis Blues, as well as the Nashville Predators. We talked a lot about Steven Stamkos, but could there be another star player in that team that might actually possibly move this year? We'll discuss that, plus news from the waiver wire involving Vitaly Kravtsov, several injury updates as well. Big news in Dallas regarding a Stadium Series game in 2027, and the Winnipeg Jets are attempting to lock up their captain on a long-term deal. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. We're going to kick things off with news from the NHL waiver wire. We found out today that the Vancouver Canucks and forward Vitaly Kravtsov have mutually agreed to part ways. Now, he does require waivers so that can happen, so he's been placed on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. And of course, like I said, this is something that to happen, they have to mutually agree upon, unless the team, of course, has some sort of, piece of information that he violated something that's, whatever, like that can happen in that case. But this is a mutually agreed upon situation. So Kravtsov is rumored to be wanting to head back to Russia. Of course, didn't earn a roster spot out of training camp. Has been sent down to the minors and just not having fun. It's not really what he was hoping for. He had a good year in the KHL last year, but still doesn't seem like he can quite cut it in the NHL. There is reports that he may be signing a multi-year, 2 or 3 year deal back in the KHL. So I would suspect after multiple attempts in a multi-year contract in Russia that this is probably the last we've seen here of Vitaly Kravtsov around the NHL. A bunch of injury updates as well, including the Pittsburgh Penguins, who actually had a pretty good showing in Toronto yesterday. They had a really good start to the game. The Leafs did ultimately come back, but they've had a pretty good start to the year, I must say, surprising a lot of people, but they ended up placing 3 players on injured reserve today, including goaltender Tristan Jarry. He's actually had a decent start to the year. Obviously, the last few years have been up and down, inconsistent for him. Spent time in the minors, but overall, he's had a decent start, but he obviously was dealing with an injury in that game. Justin Brazeau also is having a good start to the year, also injured, and forward Noel Cherry. So those 3 guys all go to injured reserve for the Penguins, and they've recalled a couple of veterans, Ryan Graves, who ended up going through waivers and going to the minors earlier, as well as forward Danton Heinen, and goaltender Sergei Murashov, who's actually had a really good start to the year in the American Hockey League as well. I think the Penguins are starting to get excited about the possibility of what he might turn out to be for them longer term as well down the road. A bunch of other injury updates, roster moves. We know Milan Lucic was in training camp with the St. Louis Blues on a tryout. At this point, he's been sent down to sign a tryout agreement with their American Hockey League affiliate in Springfield. So Lucic has not gotten an NHL contract, but has not completely given up on a return, and will go down and try out with the AHL Blues, and then we'll see if that materializes to getting any attention in the NHL afterwards. But at this rate, I do think it's unlikely he gets an NHL contract, but he'll try out for the American Hockey League and see if it can lead to anything down the road. The Oilers are playing the Dallas Stars tonight. They activated defenseman Alec Regula, so he's back tonight. The Flames have recalled defenseman Yan Kuznetsov, so he gets another opportunity at the NHL. The Predators have recalled another former high pick of theirs, Zachary Loda. He's back to the NHL for another opportunity after spending some time in the minors. The Red Wings have returned enforcer-type forward Austin Watson back to the American Hockey League. The New York Rangers recalled Connor Mackey. And a quick update as well on Pierre-Luc Dubois with Washington. We know he's going to be out for a while, but there was apparently some concern that the lower body injury he suffered could be season-ending. But at this rate, the team does not believe that's going to be the case. But he is in the process of seeking out a second opinion. They haven't quite determined if surgery is going to be needed. It probably will depend on what that second doctor's opinion is and what they have to say. Obviously, there is some speculation that if he is out for the rest of the year, the team could possibly look at making a move at some point to kind of restock their team with his salary info. Of course, we don't know what the long-term prognosis is just yet, so it's not expected that they're going to rush out and make a move to kind of backfill his spot with long-term injury reserve. Of course, with the rule changes, it makes it a little more challenging if he's going to be back for the playoffs anyway. For the time being, the belief is they're going to give Connor McMichael more of an opportunity at center. Of course, he is a centerman by what he's played at the lower levels and even a bit in the NHL before, but because of their depth at the position, he has been more of a winger more recently between this year and a bit of last year, but he'll get more of a chance to play center. They'll see where it goes, and if he is going to be out for the rest of the year by any means, then of course they could make a trade later, but not something that they're expected to rush into. Now, as I mentioned as well, we got some big news from Dallas. This actually came out pretty late last night after I'd already put out yesterday's video, but the Dallas Stars made a major announcement that they're going to be hosting a 2027 Stadium Series game, and it's going to be held at the AT&T Stadium, which is, of course, the home of the Dallas Cowboys. Football stadiums normally have the ability to hold an enormous, crowd size. The capacity there is around 80,000. I know that's what they usually get for football, but I do believe with standing room and other options that they can expand that even closer to 100,000. So it's a huge opportunity for them to have a massive crowd there. We don't know who their opponent is going to be just yet. I would suspect at this point it's probably going to be somebody in the Central Division. A division rival would probably make the most sense, but it will be held February the 20th, 2027. You never know, too. It could even end up being a team like the Edmonton Oilers. That wouldn't be completely crazy. They've had a couple of playoff battles now. Of course, the Oilers have some of the bigger stars in the game as well. That wouldn't be completely crazy to think that might be something we see. Otherwise, even a team like Colorado would be an option. Of course, with Makar, McKinnon, some big names there. Of course, division rival. But we will have to wait and see when they confirm who that is going to be. Now, speaking of teams in the Central Division, let's touch on the Winnipeg Jets, who just welcome back Captain Adam Lowry, of course, who had a pretty significant surgery in the offseason, so he was having a delayed start to the 25-26 NHL campaign. And now there's reports from TSN Insider Trading that the negotiations on a contract extension are well underway. We know Adam Lowry is a pending UFA in the last year of his deal. There's definitely mutual interest to get him re-signed. Both sides appear to be motivated, according to TSN reports, and that they're not quite there. We're not like in an imminent situation where it's going to be announced here, lickety split, but they're getting close, and it sounds like it might not be too far off. So, of course, the Jets were able to get long-term deals done with Scheifele and Hellebuyck not long ago. Obviously, Kyle Connor, a huge piece. And then you've got Morrissey. They're just in the process of locking up all their key players. So that would be a big undertaking for the Winnipeg Jets. It won't be the big ticket item we saw with Connor's deal, but still a very important player playing in the middle six of that lineup. Has good size, good leadership, lots of intangibles there as well. So Lowry expected to be the next Winnipeg Jet to be a long-term extension getting completed here. Now, as I mentioned, we get a variety of NHL trade rumors I want to take a look at. One, we'll start with the Carolina Hurricanes, and the subject is goaltending. NHL insider Frank Saravalli on his program today was talking about how the Carolina Hurricanes are pretty aggressively monitoring the goaltending market. Now, right now, they're in a pretty good spot. They've been in some bad spots earlier in the season as well as parts of the last couple of years due to goaltending injuries. It seems like Freddie Anderson is pretty much a given to not get through a season without some sort of serious injury. Kochetkov has been injured often enough as well. Brendan Bussey's been up this year and did a good job in his limited action. So for the time being, they're actually getting healthy and have more than what they need. But the long-term or longer term, whether it be this year, next few years, I still think there's some uncertainty, and I'm not sure, even though they won't probably admit too much publicly about what they're not comfortable with. Basically what Frank was saying is if they can find another goalie to come in and be that longer term, steady option, they just might make a move. Now, A few of the names he mentioned were guys that don't have a ton of experience, so I don't know if we were really going to see that. But if Devin Levi is available, like we've heard out of Buffalo, that maybe they'd be a team to watch. But again, Levi's unproven at the NHL level. He's had some experience, and it hasn't gone the greatest. Personally, like I said, I think the Sabres should... I'm surprised that they're not giving him more of a chance. I'm surprised when the moves they've made to bring in multiple other goaltenders to play ahead of him. Yes, his NHL experience so far hasn't gone well, but he's done really well in the AHL. I think he's ready and deserves another opportunity, but I'm not sure he's going to get it there. But again, like I said, unproven. So, obviously it's one of those situations that, I don't know, I don't think Levi's the answer in Carolina. But he also mentioned some other names, including a veteran and a struggling team right now, Jordan Binnington. Now, of course, we heard some rumblings about Binnington and the Blues right after the Four Nation tournament. Of course, some wondered, would Doug Armstrong sell high after Binnington had a great performance in that tournament, helped Canada win gold, shown he can still be playing on the big stage, even though the Blues, obviously since they won the Cup, haven't been quite the contender that they became that year. It's been tough to duplicate for sure, but, obviously Binnington's a guy is not having a great start to the year by any means, but he's used to the big stage, whether it be Carolina, Edmonton, or these other teams that are considering a goaltending move. I think in the right situation, getting a chance to go deep in the playoffs, I think he could thrive. So I wouldn't be shocked if they at least look into it. Doesn't mean that the Blues are going to move Binnington, but you have to think after the season that they've had and the way things have started, they have to at least think about it. I mean, Binnington's not far from the end of his contract. They have Joel Hofer, who's also, hasn't had a great start to the year either, but it might not be something that's really all that crazy to think about. So Jordan Binnington might be a name to watch, especially with the Olympics coming up. You got to remember, the trade deadline wouldn't be far after the Olympics. I would suspect, even with a rough start, that Binnington will still be one of the 3 Canadian goaltenders. If he gets a chance to play in that Olympic tournament and does well like he did at the Four Nation tournament, regardless of how that regular season has gone, and shows again on the big stage and the big moments that he can do that and get it done, I wouldn't be like, the interest in him is going to really rise, I think, going into that deadline only a few weeks after the tournament. So I could see teams calling. Whether or not they pull the trigger will depend on what's offered, of course. But St. Louis, Binnington, Carolina, maybe being a match. That wouldn't be shocking. What would they offer? I would suspect they would offer one of their other goalies in return, whether it be Kochetkov or something like that. It'd be some sort of package around that. So we'll see. But the Canes are definitely out there exploring goaltending options, according to Sarah Valley. Those are some of the interesting names that he says that they're kind of keeping an eye on. Now, another situation I thought was very interesting today on Daily Faceoff, the Jeff Merrick program. They were talking about the Nashville Predators. And of course, we know the Preds are, again, not having a phenomenal start of the year. At this point, it's kind of early to say they're definitely going to be a bottom 5 or 10 team and be a lottery team again. It could happen. It's projecting right now like it's a real possibility. But again, all it takes early in the season is a 3-4 game win streak, and suddenly it changes a lot. So I don't think we're quite there to write them off just yet, but it's a long enough sample size now that you have to think that maybe the Nashville Predators just aren't very good. With Merrick talking about the Predators, we've heard about Stamkos, and at some point maybe Trotz and Stamkos have to talk about maybe they need to move him. Maybe it's just not a good fit. It's not working out. But another name that they brought up that they thought might actually come into play is Philip Forsberg. Now, Forsberg signed to a long-term deal, a lucrative one at that, but a contract that he should have no problem living up to, especially if he gets into a more competitive team. So at this rate, they'd have to talk to Forsberg about the move because he does have trade protection. But they reference the fact, of course, if they want to make a coaching change. They said the same thing on this program that I've mentioned before. And I do honestly wonder and think it's a matter of time that we could see Barry Trotz again behind the bench. If he goes to ownership about firing Andrew Burnett and making a coaching change, they may not be too, crazy about that. It might be like, okay, if you want to fire me, you're going to have to go do it yourself, because we're not going to pay somebody else to not work for us and then hire their replacement and pay them too. So, again, could we see Trotz behind the bench? Wouldn't be shocking, at least on a short-term basis. But Philip Forsberg is a name. The reason Merrick brings it up is basically the reason that Trotz would talk to Forsberg would be that after last year going the way it did and this year starting the way it did, they may have to come to the conclusion that this team is just not built the way we thought it was, and we're going to have to rebuild. And if we have to rebuild, we need some high-end prospects. They don't have a lot of that. They obviously got fortunate last year in a sense. I mean, the reward for being bad last year was Brady Martin, right? Real good player, looks like he's going to be a big part of their future. But they're not exactly flush in high-end first-round draft picks, right? So a guy like Forsberg would be the player or one of the players on your team with the biggest value that you could get some big assets back, whether it be multiple first rounders or, a couple of other, another first round, type of recently drafted player or something like. You could get some good value there, right? So again, is Stamkos going to give you value? No, you're going to have to eat half a salary, and you're going to have to, maybe even attach something to it. Whereas Forsberg, you could get good value. So it might be something that they have to have a real serious conversation about. And, based on what Merrick's discussion was on this program today, sure sounds like he really thinks it's a real possibility. So it's going to be definitely something to monitor as the season goes along. Now, the other thing I want to touch on here as well is a couple of players with the Flyers, and this also comes from Daily Faceoff. This one from reporter Anthony DeMarco, and a couple of Flyers players linked to some other teams. But according to DeMarco, a couple of players at Flyers brass are not overly enamored with their performance this year will be Owen Tippett and Travis Konecny. Now, Konecny signed a long-term deal that's just kicking in and has a lot more history of success and playing well with the Flyers. So as much as, they're not in love with the way he's playing right now and the production he's putting up, it's a little bit less likely he gets traded. It's a little bit more complicated. It's a bigger contract. And like I said, he's just got more history there, so they might be more inclined to let him snap out of it and, to see if longer term, if it still could be a good fit there. Not saying he won't be traded, but of course he's old enough that he's got trade protection too. So it just makes it more complicated. But again, it's early in that contract. They just, if they get the right deal, but basically what he was saying about Konecny is that because of the way they're feeling about him right now, if a team really wants to make them a real solid offer and kind of say like, wow, this is a really good offer, they're going to have to consider it, and they would consider pulling the trigger for the right situation. But Owen Tippett, on the other hand, is a player that's had his name in and out of the rumor mill really for a few months now, with a lot of Flyers reporters and other reporters wondering if he really is a long-term good fit there with this team. Now, Tippett's got a good shot and he's got incredible speed, but he's not producing at the level that you'd hope. I mean, he did have a really good start to the season from a goal perspective, but then things really cooled off quite a bit. So the belief is that the Flyers and their management team are not sold at this point that long-term that he is a great fit for how their team is constructed, and that he could be a player also that fetches a decent return. I mean, he's got a fairly lucrative contract that goes with him, but there's definitely teams out there that want top six help. And in the right situation with the right line mates, he could probably find his game and really be an asset somewhere else. A couple of teams that come to mind that were kind of talked about were one, the Los Angeles Kings. We know that Marc Bergevin, who's an advisor for the Kings, because we've talked about this here in recent videos too a couple times, Marc Bergevin has been heavily scouting the Philadelphia Flyers. He's been appearing there's at least 2 or 3 times that he's been found watching their games at the arenas. So we kind of wondered, what is he keeping an eye on? Is it the Flyers? Is it a combination of Flyers and the teams they've been playing against? Like, what could be going on here? There's been some talk between reporters that maybe the Flyers and the Kings might be cooking something up. And maybe Tippett's that guy. I mean, looking at LA and how they're constructed and how their season has gone, there's a real argument to be made that he might be a good fit there. They have a lot of younger players. They do have some guys that still haven't made the NHL. I'm not sure what the package would be if they were to have some serious conversations, but ultimately, it's not a foregone conclusion to say that that wouldn't happen. I really think Tippett to the Los Angeles Kings could be a really decent move for both sides. Now, another team that comes to mind, and we haven't seen the scouting like we have with LA, but what about the Maple Leafs? The Leafs, we know for sure, are looking for top six help. A lot of the wingers they brought in to replace Mitch Marner so far have not worked out. Michelli has got a very limited number of points. I think he's at 4 or 5 points in the season. Was a healthy scratch in their game yesterday. So, they were against the Penguins in the Amazon Prime game yesterday, and Michelli, for the first time this year, was a healthy scratch. We know Nick Robertson's been available mainly because he wants to be, but he's kind of found a little bit of a groove lately. So I don't know how the Leafs feel about trading him right now. They may be having some second thoughts on that, but Joshua hasn't done a lot. Nick Waugh is been okay, but again, not that he's expected to be an all-star sniper here, but a lot of the whole idea around the Leafs and what everybody was sold was we can't replace a 100-point player. Mitch Marner's not, he's gone, and there's nobody else on the market that we can just sign and bring in that's going to give you that same player. Nothing close. So we're going to do this by committee, except the committee they brought in are not working out at all. So, then you throw in guys like Domi hasn't been scoring a whole lot. McMahon's got a few goals. He had one last night, but, they could use some help. And, the belief with Tippett, for Tippett to be successful, is that he needs to play with a good playmaking center or winger that can kind of slow things down and really help him. Just kind of, he can be the recipient. He's more of a finisher. You get the speed and the shot. So maybe playing with a guy like William Nylander. Could he be the opposite winger to Nylander with Matthews? That might be a fit. Or you even look to, another team that kind of comes to mind that I wonder about would be Ottawa. Ottawa is definitely, with not just because of Tkachuk's injury, but I think coming into the season, they knew with some aging veterans like Perron, Giroux, are they going to have enough of an offensive push to be able to take things further than what they did last year? And so far they've been okay, but they could score a little bit more. It wouldn't hurt, especially. They've had their moments, actually. They've had games where they've scored 7, and they've had games where they've scored only a couple. But ultimately, the consistency, though, through and to spread it out through the lineup is the part that I think they'd be more concerned with. Again, I'm not sure that Tippett's a perfect fit there, but whether it be a guy like Drake Batherson plays a similar style of game that, he doesn't put up the points Nylander typically does, but a really good playmaking winger can slow things down, really help you get set up. Stützle, Dylan Cousins, they could be good fits for a guy like Tippett. So again, just a train of thought. There's no connection to the teams right now, but just another team I know that is weighing out options for sure for potential score. So we'll see what happens. Teams like Toronto and LA also make a lot of sense, and there's others out there too. But Tippett is a player that is getting more and more, talked about around the league as being a player that might be on the move. So we'll see what happens. But lots of interesting tidbits here today. So let me know your thoughts, and we'll talk about it further in the comments. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. It's a place to get all your NHL news on all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.